Oh, hello.
Hello, how you doing?
Well, I'm a little under the weather, as you can hear, but
Yeah.
I'll just be drinking my tea. That'll make me feel
Yeah,
better.
well, we weren't at school on Monday.
Today.
That's
right.
Right. The kids aren't here. Do you know why?
I do. It's because it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Ah, what exactly does that mean?
Oh, well, I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King Jr. was a very famous civil rights leader.
Yeah.
So he did a lot of things to bring about change in our great nation.
Right. Well, I brought a book that I think will help explain some of those details. This is one of, well, I know I always say my favorite books, but this is my favorite book about Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes,
It's called Happy Birthday, Martin Luther King.
Oh.
Okay.
And maybe if we read it, we'll learn a little more about him and what this day is all about.
Yes, all right, here we go. Oh, goodness.
Oh.
All right. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. His parents loved him very much.
Martin Luther King had the same name as his father, except for one thing. His father was called Martin Luther King Sr., and Martin was called Martin Luther King Jr. I bet there's some of our scholars who might be a junior.
We do have some juniors, yeah. Martin went to elementary school, high school, and college in Atlanta. He was a good student, and later he went to divinity school in Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's where you go to learn more about a religion.
Yeah.
He has to become a minister.
Mm-hmm.
Martin became a pastor, just like his dad, at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. They were both called Reverend, the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. and the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
I really like these illustrations.
I love them.
Martin's job as a minister was to help people in need. He visited sick people in the hospital and made them feel better. Just, being there to comfort them and talk to them.
Important. He asked people not to fight with each other. He said there were peaceful ways to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that sounds like something we talk about a lot at Shamrock Gardens.
Yeah.
Finding
Talking
ways
things
to
out.
Use your words.
Yeah. And like his father, Martin led people in prayer and song. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. is famous because he helped our country change some of its laws. A law is like a rule. Once there was a law in some places that said only white people could sit in the front of a bus and that black people had to sit in the back.
That sounds crazy.
Absurd.
Martin Luther King said this law needed to be changed. Rosa Parks and other people helped him change it. Now all people can sit in any empty seat they like.
Yeah.
Once there were laws in some places that said African Americans could only use certain restaurants and drinking fountains. Martin Luther King and many other people helped change these laws. Now all people can share the same restaurants and drinking fountains.
They had a water fountain for white people and for colored people. That is just strange.
That's so weird.
So strange.
And a lot of times, if you notice, and I know you'll sometimes go to a museum and they'll put different water fountains, they'll show the different water fountains they use. And often the water fountain for the white people was a lot nicer than the water fountain for the colored people, or as we call them now, black people.
Right.
And so that just is so silly that you would have
so silly to think it was ever different.
quality things for different people when we're all equal.
Yeah, we are all equal. Once there was a law in some places that said black children and white children couldn't go to school together. Martin Luther King and other people, including many very brave children, had this law changed too. Now black children and white children can go to school together.
And what's really cool about that is there were a lot of children in North Carolina, in our very state, that helped make that change happen.
That's absolutely right.
Martin Luther King had a special talent for leadership. When he spoke, people listened. Poor people, rich people, white people, black people, and people from all around the world listened when Martin Luther King spoke. Many helped him work, march, sing, and pray for justice.
Seems like he was very respected.
Yes.
In the summer of 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. gave the most famous speech of his life. He gave it outdoors to 250,000 people who had come to Washington, D.C. to ask the president for jobs and freedom for black people. In his speech, Martin Luther King said that he had a dream, and his dream was that people everywhere would learn to live together without being mean to one another.
Sounds like a great dream.
Just wonderful. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed in 1968. So terrible. Because he loved poor people so much, he was given a special funeral in Atlanta, Georgia, where he was born. His body was put in a simple farm cart and pulled slowly by 2 mules to a cemetery. Thousands of people walked behind Martin in a sad, loving parade.
On his gravestone were carved these beautiful words, free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last.
Do we know why he was shot?
It was because he was saying a lot of things that people didn't agree with.
Right, so some people were very on board with this change.
Yes.
And then there were stubborn people who just didn't get it, and they were just angry, and they didn't know how to solve their problems with words.
And that is so sad.
So sad.
So sad.
Martin Luther King wanted people to be able to go places together, share food together, and love one another in peace, because he worked so hard for freedom and helped so many people gain it. We honor him every year on his special day. We call this day Martin Luther King Day, and we say to him, Happy birthday, Martin Luther King.
Well, that is a wonderful book.
Isn't that a great book?
Wow.
So this one is available in the Shamrock Gardens Library.
It's by Jean Marzolo, and right now it's in a special display for Martin Luther King Day, but if you look for it later, it might be back in the shelf.
And we hope that maybe you got to catch a special parade or something today to celebrate Martin Luther King.
And you know, a lot of people say that Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a day on, not a day off. And you know why they say that?
I don't.
Well, they say that because you're supposed to go out and do some volunteering or some
be
things
proactive
to
make
your
your community better.
Oh, exactly.
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
we got thinking the same
so
thing there.
see what you can do. If you haven't already done something today, think of something that you can do in your community to make things a little bit better. Maybe it's picking up trash, or maybe helping out or volunteering at a homeless shelter,
right,
or
animal shelter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe going and seeing some elderly folks at a nursing home.
Absolutely.
You
I know
because
we
it
always
said
want
he liked to go see people in the hospital when they were sick. You know, elderly people are often alone and they love company.
That is very true.
Yeah.
So just like he wanted to make the world a better place, think about what you can do to make the world a better place.
All right.
We'll see you later
On Live with Lucky.